welcome to the first episode of the newly revamped I'm Your Biggest Fan podcast with me, Jazmin L'Amy. I first started the idea of chatting with your favourite musicians about their favourite bands back in 2021 as a radio show, and I am so excited to bring it back in this format. All too often, we forget that our heroes started out as stand-up music fans, just like we are, before finding their own musical journey. So I think it's important to reminisce on the reasons and anecdotes from our childhoods to remind us why music is so important. But firstly, this podcast is proudly in association with the Noizze Podcast Network and sponsored by the Satanic Tea Company. I am drinking some Satanic tea on this episode, specifically their Satan's Slumber Chamomile blend to help get me some shut-eye tonight. They have a range of herbal teas, coffees, mugs, t-shirts, and other exclusive merch can be found on their website at pitchblacknorth.com, including one of my favourite mugs. Drink tea, worship Satan. Let's get into it. If you've clicked on this link, then you will know that the first band we're talking about today is Kiss. And in case you've been living under a rock for the past 50 years, or if you're a 6-month-old baby, you've still probably heard Kiss. Kiss are an American 4-piece glam rock band from New York, formed in 1973 and signed to Universal Music. To date, they have released 20 full lengths and a total of 44 albums. That's a lot of albums, with the last one, Monster, being released in 2012. They were the pinnacle and pioneers of shock rock, incorporating their signature and instantly recognizable face paint, blood spitting, fire breathing, rockets, levitating stunts, and so much more into their live shows. They've influenced hundreds, if not thousands, of bands and musicians across their 5-decade career, including my first guest today, British new wave of classic rocker Beth Blade from Beth Blade and the Beautiful Disasters. This was such a fun interview to do, and again, thanks so much to Beth for being my first guest on this podcast. This ended up being way longer than anticipated, but was still fun nonetheless. Cool, so
there we go.
Yay! Firstly, thank you so much for being my first guest on the podcast. This is very exciting.
Thank you for having me. It's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
as I explained, obviously, like, as fans of music, you always forget that the musicians you love also started out as fans of music, just like the rest of us. And I imagine, not that you'd get bored answering all the same old questions about your own music and your own material, but it's like sometimes you just want to reminisce about the reasons that got you into music in the first place.
Yeah, be a geek and be a dork and talk about music. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what most of us are, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Obviously, so the band you've chosen to talk about today is the mighty Kiss.
Yes, very, very big influence on me.
So I guess my first question is, like, what age were you when you got into Kiss, or like, do you remember the first ever time you heard them?
Yeah, so my mum and dad are huge into the rock music, 60s, 70s, 80s. So music had always been around in the house. And I don't really remember a time where there wasn't Kiss.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have a really distinct memory of being about 2, 3 years old.
Okay.
And it was the video for I Love It Loud. And I was watching that, and Paul Stanley rolls up, he jumps up in the air and he rolls on the floor with his guitar. And I remember trying to copy him and being very, very sad when my toy guitar did not survive it.
Oh no, collateral damage.
Yeah. And I guess from being so young, that kind of big image had such an impression on me that from, that point, even then, the theatrics of a rock and roll show were something that I immediately grasped onto and took interest in.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that was going to be my next question because what other music were you listening to or were you exposed to at the time that, quite didn't quite make the cut the same way Kiss's theatrics and visuals did?
Well, yeah, there's a lot. I listen to a lot of different music. So there was always different kinds of music in the house. There was Motown, there was big band music, there was musicals. My dad, he's a rocker, but his favorite film is like Singing in the Rain.
Oh,
So
amazing.
I can literally tell you every single word from that movie. But yeah, it got to the point where I took an interest in singing and songwriting. And what I would do is, my dad had made himself a mixtape for the car, and then
Cool.
I would be making a mixtape of the mixtape for my Sony Walkman that I used to carry around. And what I would do is I would, write the lyrics down to the songs in my little journal to think about how they were put together. And those songs still are in my head all the time, even now. Why Can't This Be Love by Van Halen?
Hmm.
These Dreams by Heart.
Oh,
Every Little
amazing.
Thing Does Is Magic by The Police. Lavender by a band called Marillion,
Oh,
and
yeah.
just this
And a
really,
Marillion.
Babe by Styx, and just this kind of really eclectic mix of music. Um, but for me, Kiss was the one that musically, my brain just seemed to really gravitate towards it.
Okay. And so you fell in love with them more compared to everyone else, even just with the audio,
Yeah.
not even before all the visuals, sorry.
Yeah, so there's something for me, and obviously it's not something that they get a lot of credit for. There's something for me in the songwriting that is really hooky, and it
Mm-hmm.
really just captures my attention. And there's a couple of other bands who kind of do the same. The Beatles songwriting
Yeah.
is amazing. Again, they're another band that people tend to say are overrated, but for me, the building blocks of what actually makes up the songs and the compositions are really quite similar to Kiss,
Mm-hmm.
which people tend not to connect. And I find it in David Bowie as well. And it's the same thing that grabs me. And it's really kind of informed my own songwriting in a really deep way,
Yeah.
which sounds ridiculous because they mostly write about partying and rock and roll and and sex.
Is there
So
anything else to life?
I know, right?
That's all that matters. It's funny that you say that about the Beatles because I am unfortunately one of the guilty people that never quite got on the bandwagon with the Beatles. But I think it's because firstly, I just want to say that I absolutely appreciate what they did for music, and all of my favorite bands wouldn't exist without them. So I'm just putting that out there. But I think when I got first introduced to music, I was introduced to like Guns N' Roses and Iron Maiden, and then I went heavier. So then when I went back and like tried to listen to the Beatles, I think it was a bit too soft for me and too
Yeah,
safe. Um,
yeah.
but I have my reasoning. That doesn't mean that I don't appreciate
Oh
what
no,
they
of
did.
course. Everybody has different tastes. Like I I get flamed for two of them all the time. So I particularly Pink Floyd bore me to tears. Like I would rather do a lot of things than listen to a Pink Floyd record. And I have listened to them all to make sure that
Yeah,
it's not
yeah,
just
done your
like one or two
research.
songs. And again, kind of Led Zeppelin. So to me,
Okay.
they kind of they are one of those big bands that everybody kind of loves and gives the credit to for, creating rock and roll and all that kind of thing. But for me, it just doesn't connect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's perfectly fine. But obviously you can understand how people's contributions, have made music what it is. And obviously you can go into the history of the Beatles in terms of like the recording techniques and how that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
brought music technology on, and 16 track recording and all that kind of stuff. But for me, when it comes down to the bare bones of actually writing the song, if you analyze it musicologically, the way the chords and the songs and the hooks are all put together is really interesting. And I'm a bit of a nerd about songwriting. That's my favorite thing of everything to do with music. And it's just this kind of magic
Yeah.
that I hear in these songs. And there's a couple of bands who have that. And then for me, when I was growing up, Kiss really were one of those bands where the music just made my brain come to life.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about them is that they kind of have a discography that's a little different from other people, in that if I want a rock record, I can get a rock record. If I want a metal record, I can go get a metal record.
Yeah.
Grunge, disco, pop. There's a solo album that's R&B.
Oh my God.
It's this wide variety of genre. And again, they kind of get frowned upon as a three-chord band, but I really don't feel like that's the case
Yeah.
because of that variety, really.
Yeah, that's true. I guess then, of all those albums, considering there's so many genres that they can cross over into and do so well as well on top of that, do you have a particular favorite record? Or is it
My
dependent on what mood you're in?
Yeah, so you've got your moods, but my overall favorite is probably and Kiss fans would say this doesn't count, but when Kiss in 1978 they decided that they were going to release solo albums, and a
Mm-hmm.
solo album for each member all on the same day.
I mean,
Um,
that's a really cool strategy.
it was a really cool marketing technique at the time, and they were really good at that as well, which is something we'll talk about in a little bit, I'm sure. But Paul Stanley's 1978 solo album is probably my favorite record of all
Okay.
time.
Of all time.
Of
Nice.
all time. It's just the songwriting on that is fantastic. His vocal performance, and I really love a lot of the guitar work, which is done by a guy of the name Bob Kulick, who unfortunately passed away. Who was actually originally, he auditioned to be in Kiss,
Mm-hmm.
but they passed on him and went with Ace Frehley instead, and he ended up playing. As he's a quite prolific session musician, he played with Meatloaf and a couple of other bands. And I really like his work on it, and I really love it. As far as a Kiss album, for me, probably Hotter Than Hell. It's the worst sounding album ever, but it's got the best guitar riffs ever on it. It sounds like mud. It's terrible.
God, could you
But
imagine how amazing that would sound then if it sounded better?
oh, I would love to see it re-recorded musically with the
Mm-hmm.
original vocals still on top of it. I think that would be incredible. But then, there's a lot of people I know who are into really heavy music who would never listen to Kiss because they find it too pop. But for them, I would recommend two albums. There's an album called Revenge, and there's one called Carnival of Souls, which is pretty much like listening to Alice in Chains, which is crazy. People would never think that Kiss would ever sound like that, but on that album, they do.
You know what? Now that you've said that, that's also the year I was born, funnily enough. Um,
Ah, cool.
I'm gonna go and listen to that one afterwards,
Cool.
I
I know what
think.
you like.
Because I'm pretty sure I first heard, so like when I was growing up, the only music I was getting into is whatever my dad introduced me to. So
Very much the same.
yeah, but like, Kiss never came up in like our conversations or anything. So I think the way I discovered music outside of my dad was when I started playing Guitar Hero.
Oh yeah, cool.
And or like there was that Wii game called Just Dance.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I'm pretty sure one of the tracks on there was a Kiss track. And I think it was
Oh, cool.
I Was Made for Loving You.
Yeah.
And then I think it was Crazy Nights that was on Guitar Hero. And those were like the two songs that I would flick between. And a lot of my mates from back home in Jersey, they're not metalheads at all. I'm like the only metalhead of the group. So whenever we would play Just Dance and we'd go through like, all the Britney Spears or the Beyonce songs, and it would get around to me. And I'm like, no. I'm gonna crack out the kiss.
Yeah, cool.
So I
That's all.
think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got 3 studio full-length albums with,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
with the Beautiful Disasters. How has your love of Kiss influenced your own music writing then? Because you've said that it has a lot. I know that visually your music video for Sin Eater feels like it definitely has some visual influences, including the dark theatrics and stylized makeup. But
Yeah.
musically, how does that come into play?
Yeah, so musically for me, I kind of I drift between two kind of places when it comes to writing, and it kind of informs my music taste in general. So for me, I will write for fun and escapism,
Mm-hmm.
or I will write to feel,
Right.
which are two separate things. So for me, with Kiss in the writing, again, when it comes to their songs, a lot of it is partying and rock and roll and women and sex and all that kind of thing. And this is an interesting point to bring up as well, is because people would probably suggest that Kiss are a very, maybe the wrong word, but a misogynistic band. Um, and I'm a big old feminist, so people don't quite get how the two connect.
No,
And for me,
I'm the same with Motley Crue.
for me, this is how it works. So when I was growing up, I liked rock music. I was different from other kids. They bullied me for my music taste because I didn't like everything that they liked. And in a lot of
Sounding very
Kiss's
familiar.
music, yeah, in a lot of Kiss's music, they have a lot of songs about self-empowerment, believing in who you are, working very hard. And then when it comes to the grown-up part of that, when you're, getting into your late teens and your 20s, they are just sexually out there. And for me, because it was something that I'd been around all the time, I didn't see the difference between, well, it's okay for men to write those songs, then it's okay for me to write those songs or explore those themes in my own music,
Mm-hmm.
because I've always just seen it as be
Normal.
who you are and have fun and it's normal. Um, so they do have those kind of songs. They have love songs. They do have a good range. The album I was talking to you about, Carnival of Souls, Gene Simmons wrote a song on there that is from the perspective of a pedophile priest, which people would never think that Kiss would ever delve into that. So whilst they have that core of sex, rock and roll, drinking, having fun, being who you are, standing up for yourself, they also have a couple of things where it kind of goes
Yeah, I
off
guess you could
kilter.
kind of call that like a political track as well, surely,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
you wouldn't usually associate Kiss with,
Yeah.
politics or like the issues in the church.
No, yeah, and then there's another song on that album called Childhood's End, which is inspired by the death of Kurt Cobain. And you know it Gene Simmons is actually a pretty clever man. Unfortunately, he sometimes just says things to get a headline, I guess, or he just think about what he says.
Yeah, we'll get into
uh,
that later.
yes, and he does cover quite a lot of things. And I think the thing about Kiss is that they weren't ever trying to reinvent the wheel. They
Hmm.
were trying to make the wheel bigger and more grandiose
Yeah,
and
they were
more,
trying to perfect it.
yeah. And again, like you said, with bands like Motley Crue and things like that, I think sometimes music doesn't have to be serious, and I think that's okay. And I think people can get into music critique and they can get into, their pseudo intellectualism. But for me, it just brings me joy. It makes me feel good. And again, there was a level of, Kiss weren't very well liked by a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
It almost felt for me like, I was a freak, but at least I was part of the Kiss army who are also all freaks.
Hell
So
yeah.
there's that of belonging and family almost with Kiss fans. That is a really interesting phenomenon as well. I've been very lucky to meet some really cool people just from being a Kiss fan. And it's like I could turn up in Australia tomorrow and call somebody I'd met through Kiss and they'd put me up for the night just because we're Kiss fans.
Yeah.
And that's a really nice thing.
It's wholesome. And just going back to what you were saying there about like music doesn't have to be serious. This is the thing that a lot of people forget is that music is so subjective and people write it for very different reasons and people listen to it for very different reasons as well. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you might learn something if you're listening to something specific, but then, if you had a shit day, some people like to feel worse and get it out that way, and some people like to forget about it. And sometimes that involves just, listening to ridiculous shit sometimes if it brings you happiness.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of my favorite Kiss songs is called Juice. And literally the opening line is get up and get your grandma out of here. And that is not poetry. Right?
It's hilarious though. Like, surely if it
But
makes you laugh, then it's done its
does
job.
it make me want to like fist pump and bang my head? Yes, yes, it does. It absolutely does. And anytime I hear it, it just, there is that nostalgia to it as well. And we all go through this. The music that we discover when we are teenagers and in our 20s tends to take us to a certain place in our mind and in our hearts, and it makes us feel a certain way. So
Mm-hmm.
if I'm having a bad day, I can put a Kiss record on and it will get rid of my mood like almost instantaneously
Yeah.
because it just brings me joy.
Yeah, it's interesting that like I call them my comfort bands. So
Yeah.
so I work in the industry as well. So I'm a publicist full time. So the majority of my day I will listen to whatever albums I'm working. But then to and from work or in the evenings or on my own time, like I find it really difficult to discover new music these days because it's I either listen to what I'm working or I go back to my comfort bands.
Yeah.
So with Kiss being your comfort band, being one of those bands that you discovered really like early on and it stuck with you and it's your like I guess nostalgia band. Have Kiss ever done any collaborations? Like if you could choose someone
No.
for Kiss to collab with in like recent times, who would make sense? Like for example, that time Ozzy Osbourne had Post Malone on his solo album
Yeah,
and
it's
it
an
worked.
interesting one. Um, oh, other than me, uh, so there was actually it was supposed to happen, but it fell through. So they were gonna do on the last studio album that they did, they were gonna do a track with Lady Gaga,
Oh, that sounds like
who
that would
is
have been amazing.
she actually loves heavy metal music
Yeah,
and she loves Kiss, and they were gonna do a song together called Freak, and that didn't work. But I always thought that that would be really cool.
absolutely. Why didn't it work? Do you know, or did they just
I
not?
have no idea. It was probably some like record label legal stuff or something like that. Who knows? But yeah, I thought that that would be really cool. And then also a Kiss Ghost collab would be
Oh, yeah.
amazing, amazing to me. But then also, and then people don't really know all this much, but Gene Simmons himself, he kind of in the late 70s went off and he sort of was like a bit of a talent scout. And he
Mm-hmm.
actually discovered Van Halen. He was the original manager for Van Halen,
I remember
and
reading that. Yeah.
he could not get them signed. Like nobody would sign them. So he was like, guys, I'm gonna let you go. I think you're amazing, but you need somebody else because I'm obviously not doing the job for you. So there are some demos out there apparently that have Eddie Van Halen on Kiss songs doing the lead
Oof.
guitar. and that would have been awesome. And then he also produced a solo album for Wendy O. Williams.
I don't know who that is, so you're gonna have to explain.
Oh, wow. So you need to look into Wendy O. Williams.
Okay,
So she was in the Plasmatics,
right. I've heard
and
that name.
she's she's one of the first, one of those first women in rock music who really pushed the boundaries. So like how the Butcher Babies used to come out on stage with their nipple tape and the black
Hmm.
X's. Wendy O. Williams was the first person who did that. And she used to do theatrical shows. She would come out naked, all those kind of things where she got in trouble. Police shut down her shows, and she was very punk rock, and she was a real
Okay.
forerunner for women in music. And Jean actually produced her solo album when she went solo. And Kiss actually ended up recording a couple of those songs as well. So yeah, I would really love to see a strong female musician do a collab with Kiss. And if
Hmm.
not, it would be Ghost.
Yeah. I kind of wish you hadn't told me about the Lady Gaga one now, because that one would be fucking insane. Like I've
I could just
heard
find
some,
a video. It'd be so cool.
yeah, like I remember I had like this weird period in my life at like the start of secondary school where, again, going back to the bullying thing, like I was trying to purposefully get into pop music so I had something to talk about with other people. And this was around the same time Lady Gaga was getting famous.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love Lady Gaga. And then when I discovered that she used to like be in her own heavy metal bands and used to go and do like heavy metal karaoke and stuff,
Yeah.
did a bit of digging and found like a couple of her old school heavy metal covers.
Oh, that's cool.
And they were so good. And I mean, not what a waste, but like, it's got to be
Yeah,
done. It's got to come back
you
at
never
some point.
know. She might do a rock record at some point. But yeah, she's really awesome. I really enjoyed The Fame. Her first album is a perfect pop album. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, like you said, it's kind of like genre wars. To me, good music is good tunes, good tunes. It doesn't matter the genre. If it's good, it's a good song.
Yeah,
As far as I'm concerned, that applies to pop, rap, musical, theatre, everything. And Lady Gaga she's a prolific writer, much the same way that, Taylor Swift is.
mm-hmm.
Um, and, because it's pop and because it's aimed at teenage girls, people kind of like to frown upon it and look down upon it. But
Yeah.
then you have people like Kiss who are like, nah, these people are the real deal.
Absolutely. So I've only seen Kiss live once, and it was last year when they headlined Downloads.
Oh, that was a
And
good show. I was there.
it was, I don't know. So like I'd never even watched like a live Kiss, um, like live video or anything like that. So I went in completely blind because I knew it was going to be insane. And I was
Yeah.
like, nope, I don't want to spoil it for myself. I want to go in blind. I know it's going to be good. And it was exactly what I was expecting and more. But I imagine you might have seen them quite a few more times than I have.
I've seen them probably too many times.
Go
But
on,
that's
is there a number?
so by the end of this year it will be 40 times.
Oh my god.
To be fair, 3 of those times were when we got to play with them. So yeah, 37 to 40 times.
That's still a big number.
And I've been going to see them since I was 7 years old.
Oh shit. So do
And
you remember your first time seeing them?
yeah, and it was a crazy lineup. So it was L7,
Right? Okay.
Thunder, Skunk
Nice.
Anansie,
Right.
Rage Against the Machine, and Kiss all in the same day.
Holy
That
shit.
was London Finsbury Park, 1997. And I was 7 years old, and I remember bits of it. I don't remember all of it, but I remember just being like, oh my God, this is the best thing in the world. And even now, even like literally the last time I saw them was in July, just gone. Um, it immediately transports me to a place in my mind where the world is fine, where
Hmm.
everything is okay. Because for those, and I hope you kind of felt the same when you saw them, when you're at that show, the rest of the world doesn't matter. You're there
Yeah.
for a good time, and there's so much going on. The lights, the confetti, the fire, the whole thing, is so immersive.
Hmm.
And for me, I'm an incredibly anxious person. My brain does not switch off. But when I'm at a Kiss show, my brain switches off and I can just enjoy
Yeah.
the moment. And that's what I like from a concert.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, like I felt the same way. Like it is one of those things. Like you get some bands that where like when I go and see a live show, I want to go for the live show. Like I don't give a shit about, I mean, obviously I care about how bad the sound is, but I'm
Yeah.
there for a performance, basically.
Yeah.
And Kiss really take that to the extreme, and it is the same where if I'm distracted by something, like I don't want to be distracted by anything. There's so much going on. It's hard, even if you really tried to just like think about everyday mundane life.
Yeah.
But no, I get that. I get that as well. So when you went to see them when you were 7, was that with your parents as well?
Yeah, with my parents, yeah. Yeah.
Nice. And was it your first ever show, or had you been going to
Yeah,
shows
my
before
first
that?
big show. I was very obviously I was 7, so I was really little. And then after that we just went to concerts all the time. So, as well as Kiss, we've seen like Def Leppard, Whitesnake, Journey, all those caliber bands, Bon Jovi, so much stuff. And then obviously in my teenage years, I got into some different stuff. Like Avril Lavigne was my teenage love when I was 14, and that's when I discovered eyeliner and looked like a panda for a good 3 years.
Oh, we've all got to be there.
Uh,
We've all got to go through that.
but if I wanted to go to a concert or something like that, my dad would come with me and my mum would come with me. And they were always really encouraging of going to live events and experiencing live music, which was really good.
Yeah, I can imagine then that. I mean, your first concert is always special anyway. Like mine was Bon Jovi when I was 9. Um,
Oh,
but they were kind of like my gateway band into
yeah,
other heavier stuff. Whereas with you, like the first band you ever saw is your all-time favorite band. So I guess that makes it so much more extra special that you have that
yeah,
such a core memory.
yeah. It's really quite lovely, and again, it's that familial connection as well. So, me and my dad are kind of best buds when it comes to the Kiss stuff, and we go everywhere together with it, and we've been all over the world to see them, and it's just memories just filled with joy.
Yeah.
um there's nothing negative attached to it, and it's very rare in life to be able to have something like that.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting you say that because I have exactly the same thing, like exactly the same thing with my dad and Iron Maiden. So, but we've
Awesome.
we've only seen
Uh,
Iron Maiden 3 times together, so or 4.
oh,
I think it's 4
cool.
now.
Yes,
I don't know. I remember.
it's always going to be more. I'm sure those guys will be
Oh
going
yeah,
for a long time yet.
absolutely. Like every time they announce a new tour, I just get a message from my dad straight away being like, "You're getting these tickets right as soon as they go on sale. Otherwise, I'm disowning you." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So you mentioned, have you been on the Kiss cruise? You have, haven't you?
Yes,
And
so
is
I'd been on just as a fan on holiday, and it is literally like I cannot recommend any of the rock cruises enough to people. So it's basically like a festival on a floating city,
mm-hmm.
and it's incredible. Just loads of people, and they're all there for the same reason, wanting to experience live music, and have their holiday and have a good time. So yeah, it's like download on a boat.
Do you get seasick? That's what I need to know.
On the big boat, no. On the little teeny boats, yes.
There are teeny boats. Is that like the smaller
So
stages?
so sometimes obviously when the boat stops at a destination, if it's an island, you have to get a boat to an island,
All right, that
and
makes
they're
sense.
like this on waves.
Oh,
But the big boat, the big ships that the actual cruise is on, you can barely feel it. So that's good. And then in 2018, we entered a competition.
mm-hmm.
Uh, they were looking for artists to play on the Kiss Cruise, and we applied, and we got down to the final 10, and then to 5, and then we got through to the final 3, and we got on the boat and got to play with Kiss.
That is absolutely insane.
It's
And
crazy. Like
and how was that? Like what? So you said that was 2018?
2018.
2018, yeah.
So
How
it's
was
about
that?
5 years ago. It was one of the most incredible experiences of my whole entire life. Honestly, it was wonderful. Um, so many of the other artists that were on there, there was a broad spectrum. A band called Vintage Trouble, who are kind of like a blues band, and they have one of the best frontmen I've ever seen in my life. He's like a mix in between Michael Jackson and Freddie Mercury.
Damn.
Uh, he's a guy called Ty, and then I discovered the New Roses, who are a band who are big in the new wave of classic rock scene from
Mm-hmm.
Germany as well. And we got to play with Thunder Mother were one of the other winners, and a band called Wayland. But also the reason why it was super cool for me was that other members from other lineups of Kiss were also on there. So their original lead guitarist Ace Frehley was on there, and their
Mm-hmm.
guitarist Bruce Kulick was on there as well. So it was literally like Kiss Fest,
Yeah.
and I
And did you
like
get
complete heaven.
did you get to meet them as well and chat with them, or how was that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
interaction?
yeah. So there was like a little artist area where you could go for food or drinks, or just to relax and that kind of thing, and they were all kind of hanging around there and all that kind of thing. And there was one night with oh, excuse me, that's my dog.
Oh, bless. Also a
I
Kiss
had
fan.
to lock him out because he makes noise, and now he's discovered that he the door isn't quite closed, so he's like, oh, I can hear voices. Is that somebody to come and play with me? And that's why he's waiting.
Bless. What breed is he?
He's a staffy.
Oh, bless him.
He's a big baby. He's 12 years old and he still acts like he's a puppy.
Oh, bless.
But as I was saying before he rudely interrupted me, yeah, we're all kind of walking around. And one night it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and Eric Singer was at the piano. So he's Kiss's drummer, but he's also drummed for Alice Cooper,
Yeah.
Black Sabbath, Badlands, and Brent Fitz and Todd Kearns, who are in Slash's band, but they
Mm-hmm.
were also in Bruce Kulick's band. And the guy who wrote "I Want It That Way" by the Backstreet Boys,
Oh, what a tune.
he was just there on the boat. I think he'd done some co-writing with Paul Stanley for a solo album.
Mm-hmm.
We're all just there, and they were jamming on a piano, and every people were just calling out songs, and we all sang together, drinking wine, and it was one of the coolest things like ever. It was just like one of those magic moments, the film Almost Famous, where they're
Oh, yeah.
singing Dancer on the bus. That's what it felt like, and I was just like, I can't believe that I'm here. And then there was also a really cool thing that the guys from the Dead Daisies were
Mm-hmm.
playing that year as well. And I ran into them at breakfast. All the boys had been up the night before and were still hungover in bed. And I was feeling okay. So I went to get some breakfast and bumped into them. And we were in the Bahamas, and they were like, oh, we're going to go to the recording studio where AC/DC did Back in Black. So
Oof.
it's not a studio anymore, but the building is still there. And they were like, do you want to come? And I'm like, hell yeah, I want to come. So we drove. They got a taxi, and they drove to this building, and we took some pictures, and then we ended up going to the beach. which was incredible, and the water was just like the clearest water you've ever seen. And Marco Mendoza is there, John Corabi, Dave Lowy, who is in the Dead Daisies, but he's also he's a famous businessman in Australia. And I was trying to like pay for my dinner, and he was like, dude, don't worry about it, I got it. And they were all so lovely and generous, and full of stories. And
Mhm.
it was like your rock and roll dreams have come true, and it's still ridiculous to me. And if I could speak to 7-year-old Beth and tell her that there's a t-shirt that has Kiss on it, but my name is also on there, our band name is on there, I wouldn't believe it. Never. Amazing.
Cool. So, right, piggybacking off that, you said that you have a t-shirt. I'm assuming it's the tour t-shirt from the Kiss cruise.
Yeah.
How much other Kiss merch do you have? Are you a big merch girl?
So I have some bits,
Mm-hmm.
but mostly for me it's vinyl that I collect. So vinyl and like ticket stubs and things like that. In the nicest way possible. I have spent so much money on Kiss that I'm not buying any more stuff, which is just insane. But I do collect their comic books as well from the late 90s.
Okay,
I
cool.
like comics in general, but I'm a fan of the artwork in those, and
Mm-hmm.
that's really cool. And then also, um, I do have a thing about the guitars. So the guitar that I play live is a Paul Stanley Ibanez Iceman model. Um, and if I could have one in every color, I would.
There's still time.
There's still time. I could win the lottery. Who knows?
So, do you have a favorite piece of merch that you have? Is it the guitar? Is it a specific comic book?
Oh, let me think. Something that I have that's my favorite. So probably sentimental for me. I have a guitar pick that I caught that Paul Stanley threw at me, and I didn't realize that I caught it because it actually went down my bra.
I've had the same things happen to me before as well. It's
Yeah, uh, and I love that because it's funny. So it's kind of like upstairs, and then I've got a couple of like my artist pass from the Kiss
Mhm.
cruise, so they kind of make you a little bundle, like a welcome bundle,
Yeah.
and it's like like a patch for a battle jacket, and it's got Kiss Cruise artist on it, and that's really cool,
Fuck yeah.
very sentimental.
I love that. So you mentioned there as well that you have some Kiss comic books, and Kiss have been a part of some wild things in their 5 decade career. Obviously, they
Oh,
were
totally.
in Scooby Doo, and they had a bunch of other things as well, like a partnership with Hello Kitty at one point. Um,
Yeah.
have you ever had any wild PR stunt ideas like that, or do you think there's something else they could do that they're missing that they need to add to that list?
Well, I do have to give it to Paul and Jean. Their marketing of their band, and they were the first band that turned their band into a brand.
Yeah.
Even before like the Rolling Stones and the things like that, with the tongue and the t-shirts and all that kind of stuff. And they really, I think where it really came from is that they worked really hard and they wanted to get their band out there, but they also felt that anybody who got on board was a fan. They wanted to give back and they wanted to be involved with people. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the early Kiss stunts that they did, like they did a cover of a song called Kissing Time, and they held a kissing contest. And just things like that. And there's a really important event in their kind of history um called Cadillac High. And it was a high school I believe it was in Michigan, and somebody had written to them and said that, their football team had been losing on a really bad streak, and the coach had brought in Kiss music before the games to get them amped up. And Kiss decided to go to the school and play.
Yeah, I
Like,
think I read that somewhere.
they weren't paid. They just said, right, we're gonna come and we're gonna play the show. And then obviously out of that, all the kids got in their Kiss makeups. They had the football team, they had the cheerleaders, and they're there in their costumes and all that kind of thing. And really, it's creating a public spectacle and a
Yeah.
frenzy that, that's worth its weight in gold now, if that ever happened.
Yeah.
Um, and then they did things like, when they did do the first comic book, they did a stunt where they put their blood into the red ink.
Yeah, I read that.
uh, and stuff like marketing the fact that, like, they did competitions where people would get to see a photo of them without their makeup, but then the photo would disintegrate, so they
Yeah.
would be the only people who would see it. And another thing to mention there is they had a management company and people involved from the early days. A guy called Bill O'Coin and Sean Delaney, who were, they were two gay men from New York, and
Hmm.
they originally worked in TV. They actually weren't involved with any bands when they got involved with Kiss. And it was that unique perspective of actually seeing a band as more than the music that catapulted them into the stratosphere, really.
Yeah, I think
Um,
as well, like with Kiss and all these marketing stunts that they did at the time, there wasn't social media. If you were into a band, like, you as a fan were so detached from these people that you listen to. And obviously there's this whole like rock star persona thing, and there's no bridge, there's nothing there to bridge the gap between like fan and musician. Whereas with
yeah,
Kiss, because of all this stuff that they were doing, I guess they were probably one of like the first bands where you felt like you knew them, you felt like you had a relationship with them, rather than
yeah.
just seeing them on the TV or just seeing them on the radio. They offered so many opportunities for you to understand that they were like actual people as well.
Yeah, and they were one of the first that had an official fan club. So the story of the Kiss Army is that there were a couple of kids who liked Kiss, and they were phoning a radio station and they wouldn't play them.
Mm-hmm.
And so literally, these kids coordinated phoning the radio station every single second of every day saying, you need to play Kiss or the Kiss Army are going to come down there, kind of thing. And they really created a kind of a movement
Yeah.
that was more than just about music. It was about fan power, and it was about community, which I imagine for Gene, Paul, Ace, and Peter was something that they really didn't expect. It's become something much bigger than they are. And you're saying, is there anything I think that they could do that they haven't done yet? When it comes to the merchandising side, they've got everything covered. My favorite thing, and I think it's hilarious, I want some, is that there's a Kiss mini golf in Las Vegas.
I love mini golf.
And they sell officially licensed Kiss air guitar strings.
Air guitar strings.
Air guitar strings. So it's literally, the packet is branded Kiss, but it's literally empty, and they sell it for $4.99. And people buy it, and that's genius to me.
And you say you want
Absolute
some.
genius. And I want some just because it's so ludicrous.
Do you know
Um,
what I booked last night?
what?
Flights to Las Vegas in January.
Oh, you have to go to Kiss Mini Golf.
If I go to Kiss Mini Golf, so I'm going with I'm doing Nashville and Arizona as well with one of my mates. I've
Oh, awesome.
never been to the US before, so I'm excited. We're going with her family. If we go to the Kiss Mini Golf, which I will fight for because this
Do it.
bitch loves mini golf, I will get you some air guitar strings.
Thank you. Oh, that's awesome. And for the future for them, I think Kiss, and obviously people, they're going to retire, they're going to stop touring, but that brand is going to continue for a long time. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if they go down the ABBA route and they do a hologram show, like that stays permanently in somewhere like Los Angeles or Vegas or New York, something like that, to kind of like carry it on.
Yeah.
Um, people have thought that perhaps that there might be like an official tribute band that they do, and they themselves have said that they could just get somebody to take their place because it's makeup and it's a character and anybody can put that suit on. I don't know how I feel about that, but yeah, I'm sure they've got something in the works to continue the story after their part of the story ends, I guess.
Yeah, they're definitely one of those bands that has longevity in their legacy, which not a lot of people can lay claim to. But
Yeah.
going to the other side of Kiss, Gene Simmons is obviously quite renowned for his controversial opinions on the current new guard in rock and metal. We've all seen the quote where he said rock is dead, but I have a little game show for you in this segment. I'm so excited about. I literally came up with this about 2 hours ago, and I'm so glad I did.
Oh my
So
God.
I'm gonna try not to cry with laughter. I'm gonna read you some quotes that Gene Simmons may or may not have said, and you need to tell me if you think Gene said it or if someone else said it.
Okay.
Okay. First one. I would urge all bands that say they only care about credibility and don't care about money to send me every dollar that they don't want. I'd be happy to take it off them.
I would say that Gene would say that 100%.
Yes, he did. Number 2. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do.
Oh, I mean, I would think he would say that, but it sounds too nicely phrased for him.
Yeah, there's not enough swear words in there.
Yeah, no, not enough daftness in there, so I'm going to say no.
Okay, and do you have any idea who you think might have said it?
Some other rock star who doesn't put their foot in their mouth all the time.
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, yeah.
See, that's really quite funny because for all intents and purposes, from what I've read, he was not a very nice man.
No, exactly. Honestly, some of these are hilarious. Okay, number 3. There is no passion to be found playing small, in settling for a life that is less than the one you are capable of living.
Oh, again, I feel like it's something that he would say, but it sounds too nice. I'll say no.
It's too sophisticatedly worded.
Yes.
Nelson Mandela.
Nelson Mandela. Oh, God.
Okay, number 4. I'm fascinated with myself and love hearing the sound of my own voice. I'd like to hear what I have to say. A lot of people don't like being alone because they truly don't like themselves, but I love me.
Yes, that's Gene, 100%.
It absolutely was. The greater danger for most of us lies not in settling our aim too high and falling short, but in settling our aim too low and achieving our mark.
That's not him. Again, too. Well, see, this is the thing is, Gene is actually really articulate if you actually have him talking about a topic.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's doing an interview that's promoting something to do with Kiss, he just puts on his Gene Simmons character and says some really silly things.
I should have worded these slightly differently. But yeah, that was Michelangelo, not the Ninja Turtle.
Oh, I love both.
Okay, next one. Don't look for the needle in the haystack, just buy the haystack.
Oh, that could be him.
Is that what we're going for?
Yeah.
Nope, that was said by Jack Bogle. Whoever that is.
Whoever that is.
Never underestimate the power of being popular in pop culture. You have to be able to do something. You can have a good seat at the restaurant, but you still have to pay for the meal. Fame is important, but to be rich is more important.
That sounds like him.
Yes, it was. No one has ever become poor by giving.
No, that's not him.
You're right, because that was Anne Frank.
Oh, jeez. Well.
Okay, I've got a couple more. The internet is the new battleground of Earth, the Wild West, the place of truth and opportunity.
That sounds like something he would say.
Nope, that was Andrew Tate.
Oh, God. Oh, dear.
Okay, I've got three more.
As much as I hate that man, he is kind of right, because there's many people out there like him who make a lot of money on the internet from vulnerable people.
He's the reason the internet is a battleground.
Well, yeah, right now, yeah.
Okay, if you're the greatest, it's okay to say you're the greatest. My suggestion to everybody is to be their own greatest fan. Weaker personas and personalities define that as egotistical or arrogant, but what it means is their self-esteem isn't that strong.
That sounds like him.
Yes, that is correct. It was.
Yeah.
Okay, two more. I may be small, but I've got friends that make me feel 10 feet tall.
No. Because he says he doesn't have any friends.
Correct. That was said by Mickey Mouse.
Oh. You like Mickey.
And the last one. It's more important to write something people will listen to than something that only means something to you.
Oh, I don't know if he said that, but I think it's something he would agree with.
No, that was said by my housemate Will Marshall about 2 hours ago, who also writes for Metal Hammer.
That's really good. That's true. That's truth. But yeah, so this is really interesting. So Gene is a very, very divisive character, especially after his "Rock is dead" comments.
Mm-hmm.
But there were two moments for me where I was kind of like, "Oh, Gene, what are you doing?" And that was one of them. And then the other was, the headline was, "If you're depressed, you should just go kill yourself."
Did he say that? What the fuck?
But what actually happened, obviously, with some, tabloid journalism in
They'll
particular,
change things, yeah.
they don't present the full context of what actually was said. They'll actually get the headline, and then people read the headline and they assume that's the whole story.
Yeah.
So Gene is kind of famous for the fact that he's a teetotaler. So he's never done drugs, he's never drank alcohol. He has worked from being like 10 years old consistently.
Yeah.
And in the interview where he made these comments about depression, the framing of where it came from, and it's a real interesting take on how to perhaps treat people who maybe need a little bit of education rather than, just condemning somebody outright. So Gene's background is that he was an immigrant who was born in Israel, and his mother was in the Holocaust along with the rest of the family. And she managed to survive the camps by doing the hair of one of the German officers' wives. And she managed to survive. And she had Gene, and his dad left. And they ended up going to America. And when they emigrated, when they were getting their papers done to leave, his mother saluted, like a Nazi salute to the American soldiers. And he put down her arm and said, "You never have to do that anymore." And then they emigrated to America, to New York. She worked 3 jobs and raised Gene alone. He was an only child as far as he knew at that point. And his perspective was, my mother went through the Holocaust. She survived, she got through it, and then she had to bring me up on her own. And she did all that without being diagnosed with depression, with anxiety, with any form of mental health issues, which, you would consider that somebody going through that absolutely would have some issues.
Yeah.
And he said that she kept going and she kept strong and she was able to see the value in life without getting into drink and drugs. And he was like, and then you have people who get into drink and drugs and they're saying, oh, I can't stop and it's going to kill me. And then his comment was, well, if you're going to do that, go kill yourself then. Because in his perspective, if somebody who has survived the Holocaust
Mm-hmm.
survive, then why are there people with these issues not able to function and cope with reality when comparatively they may have an easier life?
Yeah.
Now, people forget that he's a 60, 70-year-old man. He comes from a period of time where, like his mother, you just got through it. There was no
Yeah.
help. Um, and then kind of after he said those things, it was kind of sensationalized. And
Yeah.
obviously he didn't understand mental health issues the way that we see them now and the way that they happen now. Obviously, the modern world is
It's so
completely
different. You
different.
can't
And
you can't compare. If all you've
exactly,
known in your life is what you've been through, then it's hard
exactly,
to imagine a different scenario than what you've lived.
exactly. So for him, he's thinking, well, in my life, I've seen somebody who's been through the worst of the worst, which it is. But then I see people in, kids in Los Angeles whose mum and dad are fabulously rich and wealthy and they get addicted. And he can't understand that, or at the time, he couldn't. So he opened his mouth about a topic that he didn't know about
Yeah.
and got pretty crucified, and people think he's this mean, uncaring person. But afterwards, actually he did say that, his children talked to him, showed him some resources,
Mm.
talked to him about these things that maybe he had never experienced.
Yeah.
Uh, and he learned from his lesson, and now, he does a lot of work for those kind of charities and realized his mistake.
Yeah.
Which I think, we can all I I firmly believe in consequences. People say cancel culture and all this kind of thing. I don't think it's cancel culture. I think it's consequence culture. But if you make a mistake and you genuinely try and rectify it, or
Yeah.
you misunderstand a situation, or you're just not educated, and then you go and educate yourself, I think that, you should get some form of, not a reprieve, but you get kind of like, well, fair play, at least you're trying,
Yeah,
kind of.
exactly. Yeah, no, I agree with that as well,
Uh,
wholeheartedly.
and then the rock is dead thing, again, the context of the actual interview, if you read it, it's actually him saying that he believes that you're never going to see a band get as big as Kiss did. You're never going to see a band get as big as AC/DC or Bon Jovi, or like it was in the 70s and the 80s. And that's because of the change in the industry. So right now, rock and metal is not the popular music that is the biggest seller anymore. That's
Yeah.
just a fact. And if the music industry stays the way that it stays, which is, you know, other than a couple of bands that have broken through to the mainstream, it's still relatively underground, and
Mm-hmm.
it's more based on community and fan power than chart success. And then you have, the change of album sales is now streaming revenue, and record deals aren't necessarily required to be a band.
Yeah.
So he was saying that rock is dead in terms of industry, in terms of doing big business the way that it used to. He wasn't saying that there's no rock bands. He wasn't saying that there's no, because he knows that there's talent out there. Kiss
Yeah.
over the years are known for giving bands a shot and giving them tours and putting them on, because when they were a young band, a lot of bands didn't like them because their show was so big and so different. So
Mm-hmm.
they made a point to give bands a shot. So you've got a lot of bands out there who got their first tours with Kiss. And Gene is a very business orientated man.
Yeah.
And I think personally that comes from his childhood trauma of being abandoned by his dad and being a refugee. And in his mind, he was like, I want to make a living
Mm-hmm.
and get as much as I possibly can. He is the American dream. But when he's saying rock is dead, that's a big term. And he knows when he says that, he's going to get inches of columns. He knows, 100%.
Absolutely. Because
But
that's how
then
you do business.
exactly, a famous quote of his is, all publicity is good publicity. And he is right because, and you mentioned Andrew Tate earlier, even if it's a bad thing, when people are talking about people, it's generating interest and income. And now, especially in the music industry, all your engagement is online,
Yeah.
and
It's all
creating
about
engagement
clicks.
and clicks is creating income. So I feel that when he said that, he knew exactly what he's doing. But I don't necessarily disagree with him because I find it hard to believe that there's going to be somebody as big as Iron Maiden ever again, because of the change to the industry, because of the change to the recording industry, because of the change to the live music industry
Yeah.
in general. And I mean, I would love for it to change. I would love rock to become the most popular music in the world again, but whether it will or not, I'm not too sure. But I
Yeah.
don't think any of us can predict it. And luckily, I don't know exactly how old you are, but you seem kind of like my generation. Is that there are less people into rock and metal than there are into other things. So there's still that kind of socially outcast kind of vibe
Yeah.
about it all. And again, that goes with kind of like the underground thing. You only see bands like Metallica or um Iron Maiden selling out arenas. It, but what I will say, there's been a couple of bands recently who have transversed that, and they're kind of managing to break that border, like Maneskin.
Mm-hmm.
I saw them recently at a sold out Stadio Olimpico in Rome, and they are bringing rock music to the mainstream.
Yeah.
And maybe it is possible. Who knows? I would like it to be.
I mean, only time will tell at this point. I guess like
Like,
as well, I think you've got to have a big combination of things. Like it's not just about the music anymore
no,
because of social media and because of streaming as well. Like you do have to, it isn't just about,
yeah,
what you're putting out. It's about how you look, it's about your personality,
yeah,
how you connect, how you I guess it's the same with Kiss as well. It's like how you brand yourself. And
yeah,
Maneskin are
absolutely.
definitely, becoming a brand now as well.
Yeah. And it's kind of sad in a way, but also it's the new way.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I certainly struggle with it. Obviously, we're in a band and we are very old school in that we like to go out there and we like to play and do the show. But for me, when I grew up, rock stars were a little bit mysterious. You didn't know everything about their lives.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of like people aren't necessarily buying your album for your music, they're investing in you as a person
Yeah.
because they can get it for free. They need a reason that they actually want to invest in it,
Yeah. Which
which is
is
difficult because you're not just a musician, you're a content creator
mhm.
as well. And you have to be, otherwise you wouldn't be able to be in a band anymore and be a success.
Yeah, I'm finding, so obviously like I work with bands day to day, and like you can't, especially bands that are like just starting or below a certain level, you can't just be a musician anymore, which I imagine fucking sucks. Like you also, again, at certain levels have to be your own publicist, you have to
Yeah.
be your own marketer, you have to do your own merchandise, you have to, like, even when it comes to like mixing and recording music, even some bands and musicians are their own producers and mixers and engineers.
Yeah.
And on top of that, like it doesn't pay a lot either. So you've also usually got full-time day jobs.
Yeah.
It's
100%.
so much. And then again, on top of that, content creation too. If you don't put out something like every day, the algorithm forgets you, and that's a lot of pressure. Um, so yeah, it fucking sucks.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's kind of like it's a job on top of a job on top of a job. So for me, I have a day job. I work my 40 hours a week, but then I'm also a musician. I gig on the weekends, and then you have to create content and have to write songs and then do the bookings, uh, all that kind of stuff. And, unless you're in a fortunate enough position to have management or have a team behind you or a label, in that traditional sense. And even then, you might not even have the best deal. You might be taking 25% off the top of stuff, and that's going to your label.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it is really intense, and anybody who is in this game is doing it because they love it. There's no doubt about that to me. You cannot continue to do this if it's not something you really love and you really want, because if you didn't, you wouldn't be doing it, because it's a lot, and
Yeah.
it's very time consuming. And I admire anybody who pours their heart into it, honestly. Even from the other perspective, journalists, photographers, reviewers, venues, all those people, you know. And I really believe in the community spirit of it all. We're really lucky that, we are a small band. We are growing, but not at the rate where a video's gone viral and then you have thousands of fans. We kind of try and win people over one person at a time, whether that's at a
Mm.
gig or somebody hearing us on the radio or whatever that is. And it's so hard, it really is, but I adore it. And like I said, we're quite old school, and without all of these people coming together, then we wouldn't be able to do what we love to do. And then if there were no bands, then the PR people and the reviewers, and they wouldn't have, work to do. And we're fortunate enough that we've actually crowdfunded all three of our albums.
That's
So
cool.
not the full cost of each one, but we have been able to get bigger and bigger and bigger with each release, as you kind of gain that momentum and the fan base. And a lot of people call it DIY, and I don't like that, because it's do it yourself, and it's not. We're doing it together,
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned. And I really believe that the community aspect of music saves lives.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
And for me, coming back to Kiss, there have been times in my life where the only reason that I've been able to feel like I could keep going, in my mind, I was kind of like, oh well, you know, I can't give up, or I can't consider acting on these thoughts because, well, I've got that Kiss concert to go to.
So your advice to anyone that is in a bad place is to always have a Kiss concert booked.
Or any concert, or something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Uh,
Something to live for.
and I have been through some awful things. I'm a domestic violence survivor, and something in therapy that really resounded with me was that the guy that I was talking to, who I was doing the therapy with, he said that having a creative outlet and having something like that to motivate you actually helped in my recovery so much more than if I didn't have that.
Yeah.
Said the fact that you were a musician and you were able to process your trauma out loud and write about it and put it into something
Mm-hmm.
rather than keeping it, locked up inside is actually really healthy and really good for people healing. So for me, therapy, music as therapy is such an important tool for anybody who's going through mental health issues or any kind of issues, really. And a lot of the people I know in my life all feel the same way about music. So whether
Yeah.
that's Kiss or whether it's Iron Maiden or Bon Jovi or, Hailstorm or The Struts or, Bad Omens or whoever that you love, sometimes it's the only thing that keeps you afloat. And that's
Yeah.
the beautiful for me about music and this community that we have. And I think we're very, very lucky to have it and to exist at the same time as all these incredible artists. I think it's pretty badass that we get to be around whilst these cultural phenomenons still exist.
Yeah, absolutely. It is such a spectacle to witness, especially when you see a band start and then see them grow and then see them explode, and you kind of feel like you're a part of that journey with them,
Yeah,
which is
absolutely.
beautiful. Talking about obviously music just then, they've not released any new music since 2012. Do you know if they would have any more plans to, or is this finally like no more?
I don't think that they will. I really wish they would. I wish they'd do one more, but I don't think they will. And again, the reason for that, and as they've quoted, is that there's no incentive for them to do it because in their mind, it's like, well, streaming revenue is nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, well, why should we record music that's going to get pirated and people aren't going to buy it? And I get that from a business point, but it is old school. The way that we kind of look at it is that as much as I do think that people should get more music for their streams, I really do. Spotify's profit margin is
It's a joke.
insane.
It's an absolute joke.
Um, and it does need to change. I have a suggestion on how that should work. Um, we as a younger band who are in obviously a completely different position than a band like Kiss, we just see it as a tool rather than a guaranteed revenue income stream,
Yeah.
which is absolutely fine. But like for me, Spotify, the way that it should work is after you've listened to something 10 times, you should have to purchase it if you want to continue to listen to it.
I can get behind that.
Because I think that's fair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like I've always been like a CD gal. Like my CD
Yeah,
collection is my pride and joy. And that's how I first discovered music on CDs, and that's how I will always like nowadays. Now that I have it, it only took me until I started working in the industry about 2.5 years ago to finally get a Spotify account for work purposes.
yeah, that's cool. I like that. Old
and
school.
and now it's a case of, if I listen to something on Spotify, I can listen to something on the day it's released. If I love it enough, which is more often the case than not, thankfully, I will then go buy the CD. Because
Yeah,
as well, like if for whatever reason the internet crashes or a device fails, like you don't own any of that
yeah,
music, none of that is
yeah,
yours.
yeah.
Whereas like my CD collection, I know that unless I lose those CDs, they are forever gonna be mine. I have to
Yeah.
rely on, technology
Yeah, and
as such.
I like having something physical in my hand. But coming back to marketing, when it comes to that, so there's been a boom in vinyl in the last
Hmm.
however, and in the last year especially, and it's getting the younger generation of people who are into music buying physical media.
Yeah.
And the one person who has managed it is Taylor Swift. She literally has her young fan base buying 5 different colors of vinyl because they want to collect every single one. And she's using old tactics, but she's using it on a young fan base,
Yeah.
which she can do because it's pop and it's popular. But what it would probably take for a rock band again is a rock band who connects with the younger audience and then get them into collecting and completism and things like
Hmm.
that. And that's how the industry would probably recover.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess as well, like it's that the whole issue of what they called like the instant generation. Like they're so used to getting things instantly and
Yeah,
their
straight
attention
away.
spans are so much shorter. Whereas like with physical copies of stuff, you gotta wait. You gotta wait for things to be delivered.
Yeah.
There's a whole ritual into going into it, like which for me I love. Like when I was getting into bands, my
Yeah.
favorite thing was to go through the inside leaflet and read all the lyrics as I was listening to it.
Yeah,
But
same. Absolutely.
that
And then you've
takes a
got,
lot of time now, which some people don't like.
yeah, they don't. And then there was guys like Prince, who had again another great marketing strategy was that he would put a CD in the price of his concert tickets. So for every seat that he sold to his tour, it counted as a CD sale.
That's good. That's a good idea.
So I've often thought, so our band's going to start doing shows, and in the price of the ticket for the show, they have a CD or an EP that they're going to give to every person that comes through the door.
Mm-hmm. It's
You
like if
know,
you want to
that
come and
kind
see
of thing.
us, you've also got to support our day-to-day music.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And trying to reintegrate it, especially down at a grassroots level. So for us, our fan base is maybe a little older, but they are really good at that kind of thing. So you look at guys like Those Damn Crows, they
Yeah.
kind of came out of our scene, and a lot of the people I know are maybe in their 40s and 50s. And they, again, they'll buy all the different kinds of vinyl, they'll buy the different CDs, they'll buy all the different t shirts. And again, like perhaps for me thinking about the younger generation when it comes to your merch, obviously you've got your production costs and all those kind of things, but maybe having a sliding scale. So what about having a student discount for your
Mm.
fans, students, or they're at university, or they're studying, or they're doing an apprenticeship, and they can get your CD a couple of pounds cheaper than someone who's like, 40 years old in full-time employment and they can afford to spend their disposable income on music.
Yeah.
It's about finding different ways
Catering,
to reach
catering to
people.
your audience. Yeah. So if Kiss did release brand new music today, what would you hope it would sound like compared to what you actually think it would end up sounding like? Considering, as you said before, like they can branch into so many
Yeah.
different genres and have done over the years. If they were to make new music now, what do you think that would sound like?
So because of their fan base, who are predominantly older, I think that they would try and make it sound like one of their first like 6 or 7 albums, because they would be banking on the monetary gain from their core fan base. So if
Mm-hmm.
they do something that was completely outlandish or change of genre again, they wouldn't be able to depend on that income from selling the records to the people that they would guarantee would buy it.
Yeah.
But a little while ago, they did do a song with a Japanese girl band.
Okay. What band was this?
I can't remember what they were called.
I think I know
I
like
can't for the life.
three, but that's it.
And they did like a single where it was half the girls and half them, and it was very futuristic and it was very K-pop orientated. So, if the right thing came up, I don't think that they'd be opposed to it.
Mm.
But my bet would be that it would sound really old school. It would be a 70s rock record. And not that there's anything wrong with that, you know what I mean? Um, but yeah, I really wish they would make a last record, but I don't think they will.
Yeah. And like as well, they had their first farewell tour in 2000 and it's been 23 years since then and they're still touring. What
Yeah.
what do you think about bands that keep coming back? I mean, obviously as a fan, it's great, especially if you've not seen a band before. Like for me, Motley Crue I'd never seen until this year. So I'm
Yeah.
so glad that they did come back because that's given me and people younger than me that had gotten
The
into
chance,
them. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So with stuff like that, I think we have to remember that people change and circumstances change. And I think sometimes we have these big expectations of our heroes and we think that they aren't human.
Mm-hmm.
We forget that they're people
Yeah.
and that their lives are exactly, even though they're rich and they're famous, they still go through the same things that we go through. So in Kiss's case, in 2000, they'd had the original lineup back together, and two of those members were again suffering addiction issues or they were bickering and squabbling, and that's why they decided to call it quits. It wasn't that they didn't enjoy it anymore. For like Gene and Paul, they still loved performing, but they didn't enjoy performing in an atmosphere that they felt was unstable.
Yeah.
So eventually they got new members and they continued. Whereas now, they are getting on a bit, and it's not like the Rolling Stones where they can come out on stage and they come out in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt and perform with Kiss when you've got that whole show.
Mm-hmm.
They've got their outfits, they've got the makeup, they've got the lifts, the hydraulics, all that kind of stuff to contend to. And Gene's outfit, weighs 50 pounds, and then you've got a 10-pound guitar on top of that. And he's 74.
It's impressive.
It is really impressive. And I tell you something, I have actually tried his boots on and Paul Stanley's boots, and I have no idea how they do it because I fall over on stage sometimes when I'm wearing flats. Like they are just incredible, and it's athletic. It takes
Mm-hmm.
a level of athleticism, and they have families and children, and they're coming to that point in their lives where they're ready to say goodbye to it in terms of them, touring. And I'm gonna go to their last show. However, if they then do another show, I mean, I'm not going to be angry. I'm going to be happy that I'm going to get to do the thing that I like to do again.
Yeah.
Because to me, it is really sad thinking that that part of my life is over. And also, like, if I ever do have kids, they're not going to get to see kids.
Yeah, it's crazy
And
to
that
think about.
sucks. It sucks.
You're gonna be one of those
Um,
parents where you're like, back in my day, Kiss was the best band ever. And
yeah,
they're gonna be like,
pretty
shut
much.
up, mum, don't know who that is.
Um, and and then there's marketing and people get annoyed at it, and I get that because they're buying into it being the final whatever. But
But
when
at
there
the
is a
time it
final,
was.
but at the time it was, and things change and people change. And you know what? While they're all still alive, if they want to keep doing that, then I'm completely fine with it because there will come a time for any band that anybody loves where they'll never be able to again
Yeah.
because people pass away. It's and that's the sad reality, is that much as we love our musical heroes, someday they are going to die. And you look at the 27 Club,
Mm.
uh, Jeff Buckley, Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse. What you wouldn't give for one more show.
Yeah.
So if they want to keep doing the show, even though they said that that was it, I'm cool with it.
Yeah, absolutely. You said that you're going to you've got more shows coming up from them, don't you? When are you next
Yes,
seeing them?
I'm seeing them in New York on December the 2nd.
Oh, nice. What a
So
Christmas
gonna
present.
Yeah, so I'm actually taking my dad with us, which was his 60th birthday surprise, which was last weekend,
Oh,
and he
amazing.
looks like he was gonna kill me.
Why?
Because it was a big gift and he's a very modest, quiet
Right,
guy.
okay.
And
I'm sure he'll
um
thank you whilst he's there.
I'm sure, and I'm really looking forward to it. And it'll be a nice way to kind of say goodbye to something that has been so massive in my life. Um, and then I just don't know what I'm going to do after that. I'm going to have to find a new band to obsess over.
I feel like so one of the things that freaks me out in life is like never knowing when the last time I'm going to do something is.
Yeah,
So
I get
actually knowing that this could be a band's final tour, for me as a fan and as an anxious person, I actually like knowing that. I would rather know that I'm going to something that could potentially be the last show than not have it branded as a farewell tour and then just never having that chance again for whatever
it.
reason.
Then you'd be kicking yourself forever if it's like, "Oh, I should have gone to that show," kind of
Yeah.
thing. It's yeah, but there are some contenders. I mean, I Hailstorm are an awesome band. Um,
Have a hailstorm tattoo.
oh, awesome! That's so cool. I've been going to see those guys since 2010,
Oh,
and
amazing.
Lizzie Hale is an idol of mine. But again, she
Same.
also happens to be, and you'll know this, she happens to be one of the nicest people you could ever wish to meet. Literally the other day, we'd done about 2 weeks ago. Sorry, we ended up doing a cover of "I Am the Fire" acoustic,
Saw that. Yep.
and I shared it. And then I woke up in the morning and she shared it on her timeline, and it was like, I have 15,000 views on my video. What happened? Like, that's so cool. And
Lizzie
she
Hale happened.
yeah, and she and the whole band, Joe, RJ,
Mhm.
Josh, they are just incredible people and incredible musicians, and they really deserve all the success they're getting.
Yeah.
Uh, and I love Joe. He's very funny. And that's the thing with kind of my two vocal idols are Lizzie Hale and Paul Stanley from Kiss, and they're so different. Um, and then besides those guys, I absolutely love Ghost.
Hmm.
I think they're the natural successor for a band like Kiss. Just you.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
and I love the Struts as well. I think Luke Spiller is probably the best modern frontman I've ever seen. Ever. He's like Freddie Mercury meets Mick Jagger meets Joan Jett on the
Oh,
stage.
amazing. What a combo.
Like, and again, their concerts very much remind me of Kiss. So when you
Mm,
go to a Struts concert, it's that engagement and that level of fun and joy where you completely forget about the outside world.
yeah,
And I adore that. And I think we need more of that.
absolutely. Well, I think that is the perfect place to stop. Thank you so much for chatting with me about this. One of the reasons I love doing this is because, like I said, I find it so hard to get into new music nowadays because I just don't have
Yeah.
the time. And
Yeah.
I get into music more when there's like excitement and enthusiasm and personality behind it. So
Yeah.
it's really cool. Not that I'm discovering Kiss for the first time, but I'm discovering them in a different way when I've got like someone else talking to me about it with their excitement.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
kind of like piggyback off that. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
been really
absolutely.
cool. Thank you for listening to I'm Your Biggest Fan. If you enjoyed what you heard, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, send it to your nan in the post. Every little helps. You can follow us everywhere at biggestfan_pod. Follow me everywhere at Wrathchild_Jazz. Noizze at Noizze UK on everything, Noizze Podcast Network at Noizze Podcast Network on everything, and Satanic Tico at Satanic Tico and at Pitch Black Nor. If you have a band member in mind that you think would be perfect for this podcast, perfect for this topic of conversation, or maybe you are the band member and you're the super fan, drop us a comment, drop us an email. All other info can be found below in the description. And thanks again for listening. We'll catch you soon.